next session, the speaker is myself. And then, as I said, that I initially thought about giving a presentation on the Green New Deal. I explained about this issue a little bit today to you. And then instead of that, then I was asked to talk about Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And then this issue is the one of the key focus area of my interest in research and education these days. If you cover the UNFCCC negotiations or Paris Agreement or even Kyoto Protocol, you may have heard about the market mechanism. Maybe some of you, at least, if not all, should be familiar with the CDM project, Clean Development Mechanism, under the Kyoto Protocol. And then Article 6 is related to that. And then many people call Article 6 as a market mechanism. But it seems like there are a lot more opportunities available under this article of the Paris Agreement. So even I personally am reluctant to call this as a market mechanism per se. It has some market principles inside, very important, but you can see some other aspects of this mechanism and for implementing your NDC. So in that sense, that I'm going to talk about state of the play of negotiation Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So let me just show or share the screen so that you can see my presentation. Can now everybody see my screen? Yes? Okay, if you can see my screen, raise your hands so that I can make sure that you are, okay, good. So Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, the roles of Article 6 in implementing NDC. Let me ask you before I start this presentation, how many of you are familiar with the Paris Agreement? Do you know the Paris Agreement? Of course, raise your hands if you know Paris Agreement. If you heard about the Paris Agreement, raise your hands. Raise your hands if you heard about the Kyoto Protocol. UNFCCC. Raise your hands if you don't know the climate change, term of climate change, what it is. Raise your if you don't know this. Everyone knows this, right? UNFCCC, Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, these legal instruments are the founding documents to deal with climate change issues at the global level. So your CRGE is an Ethiopian version of how to address climate change by your country. Okay, so in order to have a bigger picture and then understand even the opportunities available in climate area, I think it is very important for you to understand UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and then now Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is a treaty which has more detailed plans on how to implement UNFCCC Framework Convention. Okay, Paris Agreement was first adopted in 2015. When? 2015. Is there anybody who were born after 2015 in this room? Raise your hands if you were born after 2015. Nobody, right? And then the implication that I explained to people about the Paris Agreement is that Paris Agreement changed the whole approach of how to address climate change from the angle of giving the cost. So when we talk about climate change, natural reaction is that, okay, if we address climate change, it will prevent our society from the development of economy. That's a general perception, right? But however, in 2015, when countries agreed on Paris Agreement, they changed the paradigm, saying that, okay, you find a way of addressing climate change, it will ensure your development. So that's why your CRGE is a development plan from my angle. Okay, it's not a mechanism to prevent people from being more prosperous. It's a mechanism, it's an instrument which will ensure their sustainable development. Okay, and how to do it? By implementing Paris Agreement. So in other words, Paris Agreement has become a founding document, I would say, in order to ensure the sustainable development, low carbon development, green growth, whatever you call, thereby not only reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also ensuring sustainable development. Okay, and then among different articles of the Paris Agreement, and then we have Article 6. Once again, nickname of this is sometimes called as international market mechanism. In the negotiations, countries call it a market mechanism. And then some other people say it might be something more unique than the simple market mechanism. Okay, and then if you know this, it will give you more opportunity to bring the available sources, technology transfer, financial resources out from the outside Ethiopia. Okay, in the sense that I have seen the big potential of the Paris Agreement, especially Article 6, and then this is the topic that I'd like to share with you today. So that's why the subtitle of my presentation today is Roles of Article 6 in Implementing NDCs. I have today about more than 40 slides actually, and I don't think I can go through everything in detail, but I'll try to do my best, okay, to do so. First thing that we need to do is we need to read Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, okay? So let me ask you again, have you ever read Article 6 of Paris Agreement? Very few. I don't have to wait. How many of you are familiar with the CDM? Raise your hands. If you heard about the CDM, if you know about the CDM, right? This is make it easy for you to understand. This is a sort of the CDM related article text, okay? And I already indicated that there are a lot of benefits available, for the countries, especially not only developed countries, also developing countries. In that sense, this is the full text of the Paris Agreement, Article 6. Okay, and then here I included the web link. I don't think it doesn't give us to go to the website, but I included this. If you click on this, then you will see the real text available. Okay, I made some the changes in terms of colors and others here. We need to read this together. Okay, if we understand this, then you have very good ideas on what to do. Okay, so here we say here Article 6. Oops, sorry. And then here we say this part. Do you see my my mouse moving? Raise your hands if so. You see my mouse moving? No? Yes, okay, good. This is paragraph 1. It says parties recognize that some parties choose to pursue voluntary cooperation. Here, voluntary cooperation, nobody will ask you to use Article 6 unless you want to do so. Here, you means the government, okay? In implementing of their nationally determined contributions. So you know the NDC, right? CRGE is the name of NDC of Ethiopia. Every country has their own plan, okay? And then they can give their own name, you know, depending on the situation. But in the Paris Agreement, they are all called as NDC, Nationally Determined Contributions, to allow for higher ambition in their mitigation adaptation actions and to promote sustainable development and environment integrity. This is a general term, but it involves a lot of information, a lot of important information already. So here, parties, as I said, parties can choose, only parties, not private sector, okay? Not a company, only government, not local government, but federal government. Only government can choose to pursue voluntarily cooperate with whom? With other countries. Okay, why? Because countries agreed on this. Okay, why? And for, you know, for fun? No, only for implementing, for the purpose of implementing your NDC. Okay, why? Because countries agreed to do so. Okay, for what? Higher ambition means mitigation. Here, mainly Article 6 is all about the mitigation. Okay, even if it says adaptation, but there will be very, very little opportunity for you to be able to use Article 6 for the adaptation purpose. You will understand why if you complete listening to my presentation today. And to promote sustainable development and environment integrity, there is no cheating. Okay, you have to be very, very transparent. And then your college has been very active on MRV, right? MRV is directly related to environment integrity. Okay, so when I see your college's activities and then education programs and research, then I see good potential for your college to be able to use, you know, this idea of Article 6 for various purposes later on. Now, paragraph 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I provide the different colors, right? Under the Article 6, there are 3 different mechanisms. Okay, one is governed by paragraphs 2 and 3. Second one is governed by paragraphs 4 to 7. Third one governed by paragraphs 8 and 9. Okay, if you carefully read this, there are a lot of developments made since you know, Kyoto Protocol uses CDM, joint implementation, and ETS as a markup mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol. Here, paragraph 2, we call this cooperative approach. You see that here, right? Paragraph 2 and 3 governs the issues of cooperative approaches. Paragraph 4 governs the issue of, here, what you see, mechanism, right? Some people in the negotiation these days call this mechanism as the SDM, Sustainable Development Mechanism, but actually the Paris Agreement itself doesn't say so. It only says a mechanism. Okay, so cooperative approaches, we call this 6.2 mechanism, right? It's a mechanism governed by Article 6.2. And then here, another mechanism is called as a mechanism governed by 6.4. So 6.4 mechanism. And here, third one is a non-market approaches. It's a non-market mechanism. It doesn't make sense to many people that why non-market mechanism included in this Article 6, which is about the market mechanism. That's because of the negotiation. Bolivia, one single country, almost blocked the negotiations in 2015. They urged the countries to consider to include the non-market approaches. So UNFCCC process is a consensus based, so everybody basically needs to agree. So in order to be blocked by one country, you know, countries agree to include them. But so far, even if it is available, and then it will be used to some extent later on, but you know, main focuses are given to 2 mechanisms, 6.2 mechanism and 6.4 mechanism. Now you understand? 6.2 mechanism, cooperative approaches. It's very important for you to read this. Parties, once again, who can be involved in this? That'll become, Samsung cannot do this. Okay, only governments, members of the UNFCCC. Here, parties means that the member of the UNFCCC. Therefore, United States, if they would withdraw themselves from Paris Agreement, they are not eligible to use this mechanism because it only says parties, means that the member country of the UN climate change agreement. Okay, shall, where engaging a voluntary basis. Once again, nobody will ask you to do anything. Voluntary basis in cooperative approaches that involve the use of here very important term, internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. ITMOs, very, very important. If you are familiar with CDM, then you may know the CER, right? And CERs are called as credits. And then here, if we want to use the term of credits here, relevant term is ITMO. But ITMOs can be credits, but ITMOs can be something else. What is it? Still in the negotiations. The definition of ETO is still in negotiations. Countries were supposed to finish the some of the detailed rules under the Article 6 last year in Madrid, but somehow it didn't happen. So, you know, some detailed issues are still impending, including the definition of ITMOs. So if you think that, if you meet, say, Koreans, you know, many of them think that the ITMOs are the like ETS credits, but it can be a, you know, ETS credits can be a ITMO, but it is not yet decided, okay? Here, very important, towards nationally determined contributions. Once again, it must be used in order to implement NDC, okay? Because it says so. Promote sustainable development and environment integrity and transparency, right? Including a governance. So you need to have a governance structure and shall apply robust accounting that is related to MRV, right? To ensure inter alia avoidance of double counting, consistent with the guidance adopted by conference parties serving as the meeting of the parties to the agreement. So it should be consistent with the guidance. Basically, Article 6.2 says, okay, as long as you want to develop the mechanism which will be used to implement your NDC, you can design it. But there are some conditions. First, you need to ensure follow the guidance. What are the guidance? This is the negotiation item that countries were supposed to finish last year, but still pending. Okay. In accordance with the guidance, you need to avoid the double counting. And you need to design it in order to ensure the environment integrity and achieve the sustainable development. If you comply with these requirements, everything is up to you, right? That's why voluntary and cooperative approaches. So in other words, if you read this, many things are in the hands of the states, right? They can design their own mechanism by themselves. Between two countries, like between Korea and Ethiopia, we can design the mechanism as long as, you know, requirements are okay with the guidance. Okay, so therefore there is a lot of freedom in the hands of the government. That's why we call it as bottom-up mechanism, right? Because Article 6 says, okay, many things can be decided by you, okay, as long as you keep the rules on the several requirements here, right? You understand? If you understand, raise your hands. Are you following me? Yes, raise your hands. Okay, good. I hope everybody is following me. And then let's go to 6.4. How different it looks like. And you will realize very soon. A mechanism. As I said, it's a mechanism, just a mechanism to contribute the mitigation of the greenhouse gas emissions. Oh, even 6.4 says only for mitigation, right? and support sustainable development is hereby established under the authority of guidance of the conference parties. This is very important. Established under the authority and guidance of the conference parties. What it means? Who will make this mechanism? In case of 6.2, it was the parties, right? Here, who is making this? The conference parties, meaning the UNFCCC. UNFCCC will design the mechanism like a CDM. CDM is something that you cannot change, right? You just use the existing mechanism that is run by the UNFCCC. Okay, similar to CDM. This is similar to CDM. Not the same as a CDM, but similar to CDM if we are familiar with the CDM. Okay, so it's under the authority and guidance of UNFCCC. It's a top down. You see the difference? You may not have many, much freedom actually, right? There are very detailed, requirements given to you. Okay, so you just follow them if you want to use it. Okay, nobody will ask you to do that, but it's up to you. But if you want to use a 6.4 mechanism, then things are given to you. Okay, so serving as the meeting of the parties to agreement for use by parties on a voluntary basis. Once again, who is eligible to use this mechanism? Only a member state or states, right? You see that? So you already sensed that what is the feature, one of the important features of the Paris Agreement compared with the Kyoto Protocol is that Paris Agreement gives a lot more authorities to the hands of government, central government, okay? So Paris Agreement was designed to address climate change, right, by the central government. So, this is the feature. Why? Because of the Paris Agreement text itself says so, okay? And here, let me continue. Serving as the meetings of the parties to the agreement for use by parties on a voluntary basis, it shall be, once again, it used the term of supervised by your body. So there will be like, like a CDM board now, in case of CDM, something will be established under the, Paris Agreement, right? Countries has not yet agreed on the details. It's still pending in the negotiations. Designated by the conference parties, serving as a meeting of the parties to this agreement, and shall aim to promote the mitigation of greenhouse gas. And once again, you see a lot of words of the mitigation, right? Mitigation and mitigation emissions, while fostering sustainable development. So it should be used for mitigation purposes, and you should ensure the sustainable development to incentivize and facilitate the participate in the mitigation of the greenhouse gas emissions by, here, important, not only public and private entities. Oh, so detailed project implementation can involve private sectors. Okay, outcome of the mitigation outcome will be used only by the governments, but detailed implementation can be done by private sector as well. Why? Because it allows private sector to be involved. This is almost a single provision in the Paris Agreement, which allows private sector to be involved. Okay, so that's why many consulting firms, international consulting firms, are very much interested. They are pushing the negotiations on Article 6 only toward the 6.4 mechanism, because 6.2 mechanism, it might not be possible for them fully engaged in. But in 6.4 mechanism, there is even wording which allows private sector to be involved, right? Authorized, once again, authorized by your party. However, you cannot do, by yourself. You always need authorization by the government of Ethiopia if we want to do something inside the territory of Ethiopia. C, to promote, to contribute to the reduction of the emission levels in the host party. Oh, everything needs to be done in the context of helping, say, Ethiopia to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? So adaptation is not a subject for this mechanism, which will benefit from mitigation activities resulting in emission reductions that can be also be used by another party. Oh, what it means? So there will be 100 units reduced by using this mechanism, and then maybe 20 units or all 100 units can be used for another country like a Republic of Korea to meet their NDC target. That's what it says, right? To fulfill its nationally determined contributions. What if its consequence is that, okay, it encourages cooperation between the countries. Okay, you know, emission reduction happens in one country, but another country can use it. Do you think Ethiopia is a very, I know this wonderful country, but do you think Ethiopia will give, you know, this reduced emission outcome for free to Korea? Do you think your prime minister will do that? If he would do so, then if I would do so, then I'll be fired right away by my people, right? There is no free thing. But it says you can actually share emission reduction outcome with the private sector, with the Samsung in Korea. No. With government of Korea. Okay? How? You decide. Okay? If we want to be very creative, you can design the system using 6.2 mechanism. And then if we are not sure what to do, then maybe another mechanism will be used. That's a 6.4 mechanism. But do you know what? This is a piece of information that many people don't know. At the secretariat, inside the secretariat of the UNFCCC, there used to be a CDM unit, right? Under the Kyoto Protocol. Recently, I was told that they reduced the size of this office to a large extent. Why is that? If a 6.4 mechanism will be available, then this is the unit which will deal with issues on 6.4. But Secretary of UNFCCC reduced the size of this unit. Why? I assume that they thought the 6.2 mechanism will be largely used by the parties. This is my bet. This is my approach. So whenever I see two different mechanisms, especially in the context of, say, you know, cooperation, bilateral cooperation between Republic of Korea and then Ethiopia, right? When your prime minister meets my president in Seoul, and they will discuss about the $1 billion of cooperation on climate change, then I think 6.2 mechanism allows them to do something in that bigger scale. 6.4 mechanism will be only very small scale of the projects. CDM is a small scale of the project, right? It has a great successful story available. However, in terms of the overall mitigation outcomes, size-wise, still very small. If you engage in the projects, naturally, it tends to become very small, right? So I see the big potential of the 6.4. And the need to deliver overall mitigation global emissions. Here, it says that avoid the double counting, and it shares a share of the proceed. Means that, you know, if you want to engage in the 6.4 mechanism, you know, give some percentage of your work to the UNFC Secretariat, so that that amount can be used later on for the general purpose of running adaptation fund for developing countries. That's a share of proceeds. Okay, and then for the details, and then in case of the 6.2 mechanism, they have to agree on follow the guidance. Here, countries need to follow the rules, modalities, and procedures. So here, guidance sounds like a more flexible because it is voluntary and then bottom up. However, rules, modalities, and procedures is a given factor, right? You see some different nuances. Okay, so you know now negotiations are pending to agree on detailed guidance in case of 6.2 mechanism, and the rules, modalities, and procedures in case of 6.4 mechanism. I'm not going to talk about 6.8 mechanism today because of the time matter. Now you understand what I'm talking about. And then now what I want to do is that what is the implication of Article 6? That's the political economy Article 6. Okay. I need 16 weeks to tell my students on the details of this. That's what I did last semester at Korea University, right? So I know it's very dense for me to explain everything, but let me try. Okay. If you understand the text of Article 6 and then understand the major essence of what I'm talking about today, then that's very good. Okay. All right. Then political economy Article 6. This part, many of them were given in my presentation for your commissioner last year in Addis Ababa. Okay, your commissioner saw my presentation on this. So here, as I said, Article 6 doesn't mention about the market itself. Did you see any word, one single word of a market when I read the Article 6 text? No, right? There is no single word of market. However, it indicates the importance of carbon pricing if you read the lines, between the lines. Emphasize a voluntary cooperation. Now you saw it, right? In order to implement NDC. So do something by yourself. Article 6, do you know what? Is the only article in the Paris Agreement which encourages countries to cooperate to address climate change. This is the only article. Okay. Presuming using market principle through Articles 6.2 and 6.4. So I already said interstate cooperation, and they emphasize that. Okay, that's the very important function of Article 6. Number 2, very few people talk about this, but this is my main emphasizing point. Article 6, a window for climate financing. Logic is this. Just a second, I will show you this. Say, this is just the indicative one, but I'm gonna use it to explain what it means. Why it can be a window for climate finance. Party A and party B, right? So party A is acquiring party, like between Ethiopia and Korea. Then maybe Korea needs to get some emission reduction outcome to meet our target, to address the target under the NDC. And Ethiopia might have some additional things that it's enough for you to meet your target under the NDC, right? Climate change agreement. So you have leftovers, right? That's possible. So here, your targets, and then here 4 megatons. Say you can actually your current inventory, meaning that your performance, right, is this. So you already meet your target, and then you reach the level already. So you have plenty leftovers, right? And then in case of Korea, for instance, this is your target, but your emission level is way above. So you have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, this amount, right? 4 megatons. In case of Ethiopia, your target is here, but actually your current emission level is here. You have a lot of leftovers, right? Here, logic is this. Okay, from the global perspective, what we care about, we are caring about whole emission amount reduction, right? Necessary to meet 2-degree target, now 1.5 degree, right? If some country reduces more, the other country reduces less, but overall it's okay, right? So here, But the design political system that we invented is done by parties, in other words, states. Okay, then it's good if country A can bring this leftover 4 megatons from Ethiopia to Korea. Then Korea's emission level goes down enough to meet the target. Even if Ethiopia, you give this amount to Korea, then which means that your emission level will go up, right? Because you give something that can be reduced, you give it to Korea. You understand? Are you following me? But still, it's okay for you because you are meeting the target still sufficiently. And then my question, do you think your prime minister will allow Korea to use this for free? And then nobody believes so. So if this is possible, then if party A is ready to pay for it, isn't it good or bad? From Ethiopia's point of view. It is good or bad? If you think it is good, raise your hands. It is bad, raise your hands. I heard about the sort of, emission outcome is our sovereign right. Yes, that's true. Do you know what it implies? Do you know the international trading system, trade, right? Exports and imports, right? Here, what it can do, this one is like, goods, like, textile, clothing. And you have a lot of clothing left in your country. If you sell them to another country, then you can get the cash, right? That's export goods. You understand? Are you following me? Do you understand? Same thing. If you have leftovers, it's okay for you to exchange that with another country in return for getting benefits. Benefits can include everything because Article 6 doesn't say, okay, you need to get the money or whatever, right? It doesn't say that anything about it, right? You can use it. You can ask the other party to provide the money in cash, or maybe technology transfer, or maybe your prime minister might suggest to President of Republic of Korea, saying that, okay, we understand that Korea has developed the economy very fast for the last several decades. We just need your experiences and institutionalize them. Help us to establish a best science institute available so that we can have our own capacity to build our economy as Korea did before. Okay, you can make a deal, very large scale of the political deal. Maybe, okay, it will be done for 10 years with the size of, say, 10 billion US dollars. It is possible, right? In return for that, Korea is working together with Ethiopia in the context of ODA already, right? And then if this issue is attached to the issue of the ODA, then it will make a Korean president more comfortable in providing more assistance to Ethiopia. Do you know why? Because eventually when he uses a national budget, government budget, it is controlled by the Congress, National Assembly, right? And then if he say, okay, I'm using this, and not only for Ethiopia, also, our taxpayers' money can be achieved and can be used to take care of Korea at the same time. It's a good thing for both, right? And then in the Ethiopian side, if I were your prime minister, I will coordinate the actions very wisely so that I will bring the necessary financial resources. You can design it through the GCF. You can design it through bilateral cooperation called ODA, or you can knock at the door of some other organizations. It's very flexible. But every time, it will be good because it will ensure that your country will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, you always, meet the target under the UNFCCC. I'm not saying that you become the very, poor in return for sharing that outcome with another country. No, 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 that's not what I'm saying. Okay, you produce the many good textiles, and later on the automobiles, later on maybe aircrafts, right? How to do it? You need to invest in the scientific research and development, and then you need the money, right? And then you can design it by establishing and using Article 6 mechanisms. That's the essence of political economy of Article 6. CDM doesn't work in that way, didn't work in that way for various reasons. Article 6 was invented based on understanding of lessons of CDM. So if I think that what I'm talking about doesn't necessarily mean that CDM experience will be not used at all. No, no, there will be some similar ones. I think there will be mainly used by 6.4 mechanisms. Okay, but what I'm talking to you today, there is a bigger potential in regard to 6.2 mechanism. And then you can ask me, oh, Professor Chung, what is the example now? We don't have an example yet because rules are not yet decided. But I already see the great potential on this. How do I know this? Because I am in part of Korean delegation in the negotiation, and I am advising my government on Article 6. So I'm in the negotiation. So I have seen this, and then I feel very confident. It involves the previous CDM experience possibility, but it has a lot more. So this is the picture of actual negotiations. So you see this, right? Raise your hand if you see this picture. This is the negotiation session on Article 6 last year in the Madrid COP25. Okay, this is the COP venue. And then this is the side event we organized. I introduced about it, right? Your commissioner is here, and the Professor Stubbins at Harvard Kennedy School, former Environment Minister of Republic of Korea, and some others, or GGGI colleagues and some others participated. And then, so we talked about the market mechanism as well, okay? So I'm gonna share the slide later on with you, so you will go through the details. But coming back, that's about the political essence of the political economy, Article 6. Okay, climate finance, it's a window of climate finance. However, you need to do, in order to do that, Article 6 requires very transparency, avoiding double counting. What does this mean? This means that you need to have a completely developed national MRV. MRV sounds familiar to you, right? That your college is working really hard. Before, in the negotiations, whenever countries talked about the MRV, especially developing countries, this was the first item, can be listed as a non-negotiable because we don't want to talk about the MRV. This is for developed countries. No, not for us. Why do you want to dig out our inside information through the system? But these days, developing countries became more active in MRV system, as with Ethiopia. Why? If we want to get the climate financing, say, one of the good candidates to get the money is a GCF, right? Green Climate Fund. You go to Green Climate Fund and propose the proposal. They ask you, okay, what is the likely plan to achieve if we give you money, right? And then you have to report, okay, this is our baseline. And then once we use your resources, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions to this amount, okay? Then GCF may ask you and your government to report back to them on every implementation outcome, okay? And I think, I'm sure that most of the developed countries will be happily to do so. That's about MRV, transparency requirement. And then it's very, very important for your government actually to develop the national MRV system, maintaining federal level of the inventory Also, in order to do that, your government also needs to have national level of the inventory system, okay, at the local level. Oromia is the only sub-regional, state which has a region-wide, MRB system in place. I know that your college has been involved to that process. In other words, your Wondagana College is one of the leading college in developing world, which is a capability is to be able to use Article 6 mechanism to large extent. Okay, so you can be proud of yourself. That's about the political economy. I'm gonna just quickly go through all, and then as I said, Kyoto Protocol, there is something similar, and the Paris Agreement, there are a lot more. So Paris Agreement Article 6, has some components available in Kyoto, but which has a lot more, like a technology transfer available, sustainable development available, and then some others. Okay. So therefore, once again, Article 6 is a window for climate finance. In other words, do you know what? We used to say the size of the CDM market, the whole size of CDM market is $2 billion US. How much is it? $2 billion US. Do you know what is the likely size of the climate finance market? That's $200 billion US. Okay, so here you have an option. You can still use Article 6 as if like a CDM if you focus on the 6.4 mechanism, right? Or if you want to be a little bit more creative and active, actually you can use it in a way of attracting $200 billion US. So raise your hands if you are interested in $2 billion US. Raise your hands. Raise your hands if you are interested in $200 billion US. Hey, don't be shy, right? Money is not all, but naturally I see more reaction that, okay, we are interested in $200 billion US. Do you know what? How can it be used? That will be used for implementing your CRGE. Why? That's the requirement of Article 6, right? As we read together. So your CRGE is what? Is your economic development plan. That's what Innocent in the morning emphasized. Okay, when I see your CRGE, then I see, oh, Ethiopia wants to develop their economy by focusing two major areas. One, most important, forestry. Second, agriculture. These are not the main areas of development in Korea now, but it used to be in 1960s. Okay, so I have a sense why you think that these two sectors are important. When the Ethiopia economy will grow, I don't think these two areas will remain as important as now. Maybe you will see the different changes in terms of industrial structure. Okay, so that's why once again, Article 6 is a window for climate finance. So in other words, it's when you see this climate finance and then carbon market, it's not an or question, but it's and question. Okay, you can design it to use both. Okay, so in other words, what it shows that here, this is a CDM. This is the sources of climate finance. Okay, CDM is one, but one piece of it. What I'm talking about is that in the context of political economy, Article 6, if you design Article 6 well, then you can have an access to all this. Okay, that's the implication. Once again, my job is today is I will let you know that this is available, but I have no right to force your country to do this because it's voluntary. I'm just letting you know that this is opportunity. Big potential, okay? And then I'm almost started running out of time. So I will just quickly go through. This is the structure of the Paris Agreement, okay? And then next one is a negotiation schedule. The Article 6, let me explain about this. Article 6 mechanisms, they will have maybe several different mechanisms in the context of the using it most. Here you see 6.4 mechanism, right? And then what it says is that when, say, CDM type of the project will be done inside Ethiopia, right? And then mitigation outcome will be made. Now, because Ethiopia needs to report on implementation of the UNDC to the UNFCCC, then there is a possibility that Ethiopia might use a reduced emission outcome all by yourself. In case it's not a concern of Article 6, okay? However, once, say, assuming Republic of Korea would like to use some of the mitigation outcome for their own purpose, it will cross the border, right? Your mitigation outcome will move to the border inside the border of Republic of Korea. In that case, this reduced emission outcome inside Ethiopia will become ITMO and governed by 6.2 mechanism, right? Do you know what? CDM, think about the CDM. If you implement the CDM project, then outcome of CDM CERs, then it will automatically transfer to another country. No, there is another process, right? You understand what I'm saying? There is another process. 6.4 mechanism only governs the issues of how to implement the project in your country. If we are to move that outside Ethiopia, you have to design another way of doing that, okay? And then one of way of doing that is have your own mechanism under the 6.2 mechanism, okay? Too difficult for you to understand? It's okay, right? I want you to turn on your video. I see that some of you start to turn off the videos, right? I understand that this might not be your interest, but let's try to see. So there are some issues on the 6.2 mechanism in terms of how to agree on the guidance, okay? And then joint crediting mechanism is a similar one so far, which can belong to the example of 6.2 mechanism. However, this joint crediting mechanism was developed by the government of Japan under the Kyoto Protocol. So I know that Japan has some plan to revise this mechanism once detailed rules will be agreed by parties of the Paris Agreement on Article 6, because there will be some necessary changes required, okay? And then I talked about it already. So moving, it's about adjusting your national inventory. So we call it as corresponding adjustment. Corresponding adjustment is very, very important. It is related to, as I said, MRV, okay? So this is some of the details on it. And governance, and as I said, that the 6.2 is a voluntary and the bottom up, so it doesn't require the centralized governance system. However, 6.4 requires some of the governance system, okay? And there are some issues pending regarding 6.4 mechanisms. And here, I talked already a lot about the CDM. CDM will not be automatically transferred to the new mechanism under Article 6, okay? So there is an issue whether or not CDM will be continued or not. This is one of the reasons why countries failed in last year in Madrid to agree on the detailed rules of Article 6. So there are several options on the CDM transition. Current state negotiation, I'm gonna spend about 2 to 3 minutes on this and then we will finish. So I already showed you, still pending. Article 6, detailed rules on Article 6, only pending issue in the negotiation. All other articles of the Paris Agreement, they prepared for the detailed rules to implement those articles. But Article 6 is the only one. Now you see the sensitivity and importance of Article 6, especially this there is a clash between developed and developing countries on several issues. Okay, and then these are some of the major issues. Share of the proceeds, I mentioned about it. Transition of the Kyoto mechanism, that's CDM transition. Double counting, that's a corresponding adjustment that I said. Overall mitigation of global emissions, so whether or not it contributes to overall mitigation of global emission, right? So these are the four main issues that prevented the countries from agreeing on detailed rules on Article 6 last year in Madrid. Okay, and then what it says, and as we went toward the later sessions last year, actually there were a lot of pending issues, right? So and then this is, let me show you if I can have a good internet connection. Yes, this is UNFCCC website, and then you click on it. Do you see this screen? Do you see it? Raise your hands. Yeah, okay, good. This is the draft of the detailed rules of Article 6. Okay, it doesn't look long, but the countries had a hard time in agreeing on several sentences. This is all. Okay, I hope that this year's negotiations has been postponed to next year because of coronavirus. So in our next COP in Glasgow, UK, I hope that countries would agree on the detailed rules on this. Okay, this is about Article 6, paragraph 2, 6.2 mechanism, rules of 6.2 mechanism. Okay. Let me go back. Just a second. How to do it? Okay. Now you see the PPT again, right? So implications for Ethiopia, there are national and international implications. National level, importance of developing national inventory in accordance with transparency requirement, Article 13 and 6 of the Paris Agreement. Here, what's important? Here, national inventory needs to be managed and developed not only for general purpose, also Article 6, mitigate ITMO transfer. It will be good for your government to have independent government unit to take care of Article 6, right? I think that's very important. Need for establishment of a government unit to deal with implementation of Article 6, in other words. International level, need to understand the potential Article 6.2 mechanisms to be used for securing climate finance. Now you understand what I'm talking about. Rule of Article 6 doesn't need to include the details, right? Because it provides a lot of freedom to the countries to design the detailed mechanism. ITMOs are not credits per se. Okay, it may be a credits, but it can be involved with something else. Okay, and what is it? Still definition is in negotiations. Okay, and then last slide. These are some of the slides that I've been working on in the context of Article 6. And this is a former Prime Minister of Republic of Korea, and then former high-level government officers. You saw already this. This is the picture that we took together last year in Addis Ababa when we organized government officials training that I introduced today, and some other activities with the Korean leaders and international experts. And then same thing here. Okay, so this is the end of presentation. As I said, that I have about 40 slides. I didn't expect that I could go to the details in every slide, but I will share this slide later on through our project website, and then you might be able to go through again. Okay, I understand that I couldn't explain about every important things today, but I'm sure that I can come back to you later on, and so that I can give you a more detailed explanation. It requires 16 weeks, okay, but I'm sure that we'll have another chance to understand on Article 6 together. Okay, so this is my end of presentation. Now it's 4 o'clock. Already we exceeded the time. However, if you have any burning questions, then I can ask. I see some of the questions here. How do we build a strong institutional mechanism for adaptation, mitigation, climate change? Can you please tell us about the Korean experience? Make it difficult question a simple. It requires highest level of the political interest and will. The peak point that Korea was very active on climate change was the time that the Korean president himself was very much interested in climate change as his own agenda. This is the time when Korea established the GGGI and Korea hosted the GCM. Okay, so make it simple. If so, then that you can have an access to the necessary resources, human and financial, technical resources later on. Okay, so that's my short answer.